Why does a woman think about one man when she has dozens of others trying to get her attention? Why does a simple moment with him replay in her head at night while other men fade into silence? The truth is, it has nothing to do with cheesy tricks, constant texting, or fake mind games. What makes her miss him is far more subtle, far more powerful, and it's hidden in the way he carries himself when he is not even around her. When a man understands how attraction really works in the mind, he no longer begs for attention. He doesn't chase or force anything. Instead, he creates a kind of invisible presence inside her thoughts. It's the reason she smiles when she hears his name, or why she checks her phone hoping to see his message. This is not manipulation, it's psychology at its rawest form. In this video, we're going to go deep into the dark yet fascinating science of how a woman's mind attaches to a man without him saying a word. By the end, you'll see why mystery, restraint, and silence often make more noise than words ever could. There is a strange power in absence, one that most people overlook because they believe being present is the only way to hold someone's attention. But the mind doesn't work like that. Human psychology is wired in such a way that what is missing often feels louder than what is right in front of us. When a man is constantly available, always replying instantly, always trying to be there, he unknowingly weakens the very energy that could make a woman miss him. But when his presence is scarce, when she doesn't know exactly what he's doing, when she senses his attention isn't always guaranteed, that absence creates tension. And tension is the fuel of desire. Think about this for a second. When you hear a song on repeat every day, you get bored of it. At first it excites you, but soon, it becomes background noise. Now, compare that with a song you hear only once in a while, unexpectedly, at the perfect moment. That rare experience makes it special, and you wait for it again. The human brain attaches more value to something it cannot predict or control. This same rule applies to attraction. A woman doesn't miss a man who is always there on demand. She misses the man whose presence feels uncertain, whose silence leaves space for her mind to wander. Absence is powerful because it creates room for imagination. When a woman doesn't hear from a man, her brain begins to fill the gap with thoughts of him. She wonders what he's doing, who he's with, whether he's thinking about her. This uncertainty builds curiosity, and curiosity soon transforms into longing. The mind can only replay memories when new input isn't being constantly fed. That's why, in those quiet moments, she replays the way he looked at her, the way he made her laugh, or the subtle energy he carried. By not being there, he makes those small moments grow larger inside her memory. Of course, absence is not about games. It's not about ignoring messages to create fake scarcity. That only breeds resentment. The secret lies in living a life so full, so rich with purpose, that he naturally isn't always available. A man who has things to do, who invests in his goals, who spends time with friends, who has passions, he doesn't have to fake distance. His life creates it for him. And this kind of natural absence is deeply attractive because it signals independence. It shows her he is not needy. He is not desperate. He is not waiting around for her validation. Instead, he is moving, living, building. And that makes her want to be part of his orbit. Every story of longing, every tale of deep desire, is written not in moments of closeness but in moments of separation. When someone isn't there, their presence grows larger inside the mind. That is the first hidden force. A man doesn't make her miss him by being around all the time, but by giving her space to feel his absence. What makes absence so powerful is not just the silence itself, but the way the human brain reacts to it. Psychology has shown that people remember emotions more than events. A woman might forget the exact words a man said, but she will never forget how those words made her feel. So when his presence is missing, she doesn't replay the conversation word for word, she replays the feeling he left behind. If that feeling was deep, safe, exciting, or even slightly mysterious, her mind clings to it in his absence, amplifying it over and over again. That is how desire grows silently when nothing is being said. This is where most men get it wrong. They think that to keep her interest alive, they must constantly impress, constantly perform, constantly shower attention. But psychology tells a darker truth. The human mind adapts quickly to what is predictable. If she knows he will always text at the same time, always say good morning, always give attention, the excitement fades. The brain stops seeing it as special and instead labels it as routine. And routine, no matter how sweet, doesn't create longing. What creates longing is interruption, an unexpected pause that makes her notice what's missing. There's a concept in behavioral psychology called intermittent reinforcement. It's the same principle that keeps people addicted to slot machines. They don't win every time, but the unpredictability keeps them hooked. Now, this doesn't mean relationships should be turned into a casino game. But it does explain why unpredictability keeps the mind engaged. If she doesn't always know when he'll reach out, her anticipation builds. If she can't predict his every move, she pays closer attention. Silence becomes a form of presence, because it keeps her waiting. Consider real-life examples. Think about how people react when someone they care about suddenly goes quiet for a few hours. Their brain starts to invent reasons, their emotions start to rise, and the silence suddenly becomes louder than words. Studies in social psychology show that uncertainty activates the reward centers in the brain more intensely than certainty. In other words, not knowing is sometimes more powerful than knowing. This is why absence, when genuine, makes her lean in, seeking answers, craving presence. But it only works if the silence is real, not forced. If a man is quiet because he is deeply engaged in his goals, that silence feels authentic. If he is quiet because he is playing games, she will sense it, and instead of missing him, she will feel manipulated. Authenticity matters more than any trick. A man who doesn't need to broadcast every moment, who isn't desperate to constantly update her, signals strength. And strength is magnetic. When silence carries weight, it's because of the life behind it. That life makes her curious. It makes her ask, what's he doing? Who is he becoming when I'm not around? And that curiosity pulls her toward him without him lifting a finger. When a man understands the silent force of absence, the next question is, what fills that silence? Because it is not just the lack of words that makes her miss him, but the story her mind builds in that space. Human psychology shows that the brain hates empty gaps, it rushes to fill them with meaning. If she doesn't hear from him, her mind starts to imagine what he might be doing, and those imagined scenarios can feel stronger than reality. This is why mystery is so powerful. When something is left unsaid, the imagination exaggerates it. In relationships, this can turn a simple pause into an echo that lingers for longer than spoken words ever could. Think about how people become obsessed with unanswered questions. A song that ends abruptly, a movie that leaves the ending unclear, a conversation that stops mid-thought. The lack of closure creates a loop in the brain, forcing it to keep replaying the unfinished moment. In psychology, this is called the Zeigarnik effect, the tendency to remember incomplete tasks better than completed ones. When a man doesn't give her every detail, when he leaves room for her imagination, she unconsciously keeps replaying him in her mind. That's how absence transforms into desire without a single trick being used. But this power has rules. Silence that creates longing is different from silence that creates doubt or hurt. If his absence feels cold, dismissive, or careless, she won't miss him, she will protect herself. The line is thin but clear, longing grows when she feels valued yet challenged. It withers when she feels ignored. That's why the foundation must always be respect. A woman only misses what feels meaningful. If he gave nothing of substance, she won't crave his presence later. Here lies the paradox: the more authentic his presence was, the more powerful his absence becomes. A man who brought laughter, depth, and comfort when he was around makes silence heavy with memories. Every pause reminds her of what she had. Every delay makes her want it again. This is why genuine connection cannot be replaced by tricks. Without something real behind it, silence is just emptiness. With something real, silence becomes fuel for longing. Case studies in attachment psychology show that secure relationships thrive when partners have both closeness and space. Too much closeness suffocates. Too much space destroys trust. But when both are balanced, desire keeps its spark alive. Absence becomes not a wall but a bridge, a reminder of connection that remains even when words are not exchanged. And that balance is what makes her miss him without feeling manipulated. So the question is not just how to be silent, but what kind of man fills that silence with weight. Does she feel curiosity when he's gone, or does she feel relief? Does she sense strength in his quiet, or weakness? The answer depends on the man he is when she's not watching. That unseen version of him, the one she can only imagine, is the version that makes her long for more. Desire is not built in constant presence, it grows in the shadows of distance. When a man understands how to step back without disconnecting, he unlocks a hidden side of attraction that most never see. Women do not miss noise, they miss meaning. They do not long for constant messages, but for the rare ones that carry weight. When every text, every call, every touch is available at all times, the mind stops valuing it. But when something is not always within reach, the brain assigns it more worth. Scarcity creates value, not because the thing itself has changed, but because the perception around it has. Psychologists studying reward systems in the brain have found that unpredictability creates stronger emotional responses than predictability. This is the same principle casinos use: people are more hooked by uncertain rewards than guaranteed ones. In relationships, when a man is not always predictable, when his attention is not handed out without pause, she values it more when it comes. The space between interactions sharpens her anticipation. Her mind starts scanning for signs, reading deeper into his words, and holding onto the moments he does give. It's not a game, it's how the human brain naturally reacts to desire. But this does not mean pulling away coldly. Indifference is not the same as mystery. Silence that is rooted in care feels magnetic, silence that is rooted in neglect feels painful. A man who truly understands this balance doesn't disappear, he creates space in a way that makes her feel secure, yet curious. He listens more than he speaks. He allows moments of pause where her imagination fills in the gaps. He gives attention in ways that feel rare, but when he does, they carry more depth. That is why his presence feels different from others. She begins to notice that even in his silence, he communicates something powerful, that he is not desperate, not needy, but solid in himself. Real-world examples show this clearly. Think of the man who constantly floods her phone with messages, desperate for replies. At first, it might feel flattering, but soon it becomes noise, expected, predictable, and even exhausting. Now compare it with the man who texts less often, but when he does, his words carry thought and meaning. She rereads them. She waits for the next one. The difference is not the number of messages, but the psychological weight behind them. One is easily replaced. The other lingers. Women remember the way someone makes them feel, not just what is said. If his silence feels heavy with confidence, if his presence feels rare but valuable, she will begin to miss him when he's not around. She will find herself checking her phone, replaying old conversations, or recalling his expressions in her mind. That is how silence stops being empty space and turns into a powerful reminder of him. So the secret is not silence alone, it is silence filled with meaning. A silence that reflects strength, not weakness. A silence that does not scream indifference, but quietly whispers value. That is what makes a woman not just think of a man, but crave his presence when he's gone. The strongest desire is born not from what is always given, but from what is subtly withheld. When a man understands that his presence is not just something to be handed out endlessly, but something to be earned and treasured, he moves differently. He stops chasing validation and instead allows space for the woman to step toward him. This is where true connection begins, not in tricks, not in manipulation, but in the quiet gravity of self-control. Psychologists have long studied attachment, and one of the most fascinating discoveries is how longing sharpens emotion. When the brain misses someone, dopamine levels rise. This chemical is linked with motivation, craving, and even obsession. The absence of a person does not weaken connection, it often deepens it. Think of songs that remind you of someone, or a scent that suddenly brings a flood of memories. The same thing happens in relationships. When she cannot always have him at will, her brain starts creating stronger emotional links to the moments they do share. But here lies the difference between manipulation and authenticity. A man playing games with silence, ignoring her intentionally, disappearing to trigger reactions, creates anxiety, not attraction. In time, that kind of behavior pushes people away. The real power comes from silence that is rooted in self-respect. When a man doesn't always answer instantly, not because he is trying to provoke her, but because he has a full life, passions, and priorities, it changes everything. She doesn't feel punished, she feels drawn in. She wonders about him. She imagines what he's doing. She feels the pull of his independence, and that pull makes her want to step closer. The irony is that men who are desperate to be missed rarely succeed, while those who stand strong in their own path often become unforgettable. It's not about acting mysterious, it's about being someone whose life has depth beyond the relationship. Women miss men who leave behind an emotional imprint, who make their words, their touch, their presence so meaningful that even silence feels alive. They miss men who give without begging for return, who know when to speak and when to let silence build anticipation. Consider this: in experiments on memory and emotional intensity, psychologists found that people often remember the pauses in conversations as much as the words. Those small silences, where the mind is left to fill in the blanks, often create stronger impressions than constant chatter. The same applies in attraction. A man who knows how to let a moment breathe gives space for her imagination to run wild. And imagination is the most powerful force in desire. So, the secret way a man makes a woman miss him is not through tricks, not through coldness, not through fake games. It's by standing firm in who he is, by valuing his presence enough to not waste it, by allowing silence to hold meaning instead of emptiness. In that silence, she doesn't just miss his words, she misses the way he makes her feel. And that is something no other man can replace. Now the question turns to you: would you rather be the man whose constant noise fades into the background, or the man whose quiet presence echoes long after he's gone?